in a world where the value is changing from hard assets to knowledge and people, India is the biggest exporter of human capital in the world. From a strategic point of view, companies are changing. It's inevitable. And you need to adapt your skills and start working your skills accordingly from now on. Have more flexible careers, have no fear of failure, and the possibilities in this country will be absolutely fantastic. Good afternoon, everybody. It's an absolute pleasure to share this stage and to be with you here. I was really looking forward to participate in this event and especially to visit your college after having heard so much about it. Now, I am a professor of strategy. My journey, right, in a few seconds, is starting as an engineer, doing my MBA, doing my PhD in the US, then moving to Italy, to work at Bocconi University, to work at SDA Bocconi as a professor of strategy. And then in 2018, moving to India, where I've been in Mumbai since then, to manage the campus as a dean, to manage our presence in India as SDA Bocconi as a dean, and as a professor as well. Right? So originally from Spain, but then I've moved a few times in a way that definitely I did not expect when I started. And what I thought about talking to you about is a question that probably many of you are asking at this point. Or if not, you will ask yourself very soon, right? Should I be an entrepreneur? Okay. Now, this question can be answered in many different ways, right? I'm not gonna, I counsel a lot of students, obviously a lot of MBA students about what they should do as Dean of Asia Centre, but I'm not gonna answer it as a counselor, right? I'm gonna answer it as a professor of strategy. As professor of strategy, what we do is to study how companies compete with each other, how companies can gain certain advantages, and what kind of resources they need to gain those advantages. And we also study how companies will compete in the future. So the argument is, should I be an entrepreneur given how companies are competing with each other and transforming themselves, and how competition will be like in the future, when they will need you, when they will need you with certain capabilities, certain skills to accomplish what they want to do. Okay? And that's what I would like to address. Let me answer the question right away. Should you become an entrepreneur? Absolutely yes, because I'm going to be pretty radical. In the future, we're all going to be entrepreneurs. Okay? And now you could say, well, professor, that's not true, because if I go to work for a corporate, right, if I go to work for a Tata or a Reliance or any big company for that matter, the skills that are required are different, the outcomes that are expected are different, and it's just a different way to work. Right? My answer is right now, yes. But the way competition and markets are evolving, the job at a corporate in the future will be very much like the job of an entrepreneur right now. So the skills and outcomes and the way you should work will be much, much similar to what a startupper is today, even if you work for the largest corporation. Let me try to make that argument a little bit more. And I'm a professor of strategy, so I'm going to make strategic arguments. What is this? This is a market. This is a company taking a market for one product and segmenting it to death. Okay? Is a company taking a market for one product and using artificial intelligence and large amounts of data to identify all the possible micro-segments that are different from the others, segments of customers. Right? So you start with a market and you start saying, well, but there are these customers that need something different. So you have another segment. And then you take that segment and said, but not all people here want the same. So you start breaking it up, breaking it up, breaking it up. And what seemed like a market at the beginning is now a collection of thousands of microsegments. This is the death of the mass market. Companies have been very comfortable until now saying, I'm the head of a brand, my brand sells toothpaste. These are all the people who buy toothpaste. Let's try to sell. Okay. In the future, the person selling a brand of toothpaste will be looking at thousands of different types of customers they need to take care of. Okay. And this is because customers are every time more demanding of customization, but also because technology allows us to find them. This would not have been possible in the past without that machine learning, without all those data to find these sets of customers. Okay? And this is not theoretical. If you go right now to Procter & Gamble and you ask them about neighborhood analytics, they'll show you a model that uses trillions of variables, to identify more than hundreds of thousands of microsegments in the US alone. Hundreds of thousands of microsegments. Basically, for them, the market is the store, the individual store in the neighborhood. And they want to know everything about the neighborhood to do something in the store that is different than what they are doing in the store in the next neighborhood. Okay. Hundreds of thousands of microsegments. That's going to be the view of the market. This is the end of the mass market view. And that's the reality that we are moving towards, right? This is happening right now. It's going to happen across the world more and more. So now I invite you to think about the kind of company that needs to manage this, right? If you think about how companies are organized today, any regular company, right? With the business units and the finance function and the HR function and the country head and the brand head, right? The way they are organized today, do you think that type of organization is optimal or even good to manage hundreds of thousands of microsegments? It's not. It's not at all. The way companies are organized right now, today, is coming from the past century, where mass market and size and cost efficiency was the most important thing, and it was fine. Companies are organized in a way that favors mass markets, not hundreds of thousands of segments. And companies are seeing that they need to change. They need to change the way they are organized to address this market reality. Okay. And how are they changing? They are changing accordingly. We have an example of a company that has eliminated the traditional organization and has created an organization made of small teams. Each team acting like a little startup. Each team in charge of one of those little segments in the market that they found. Okay. And now you see where I'm going with this, right? Companies will need entrepreneurs. The brand head cannot manage hundreds of thousands of segments, cannot make good decisions about that. They need to give decision-making power to the people below and below and below them increasingly. And they're going to ask those managers to be able to make those decisions, to be able to look at the market and analyze it and create a product, talk to the customer, change the product, change the price, whatever it is that needs to be done. That's the future we're going towards. And we do a lot of training of corporations in my school. And the thing that companies constantly ask us about is to train their managers in these high-level skills, to make our managers more able to manage big decisions in the future. So I go back to what I was saying before. In the future, we are all entrepreneurs. You can have your own company or you can work in a corporation, but the skills that you need are exactly the same. Even if you think about the skills that companies are asking of people for the future, right? There is this survey that is done all the time about what companies require. And you see that the skills that they are asking for have to do with strategic thinking, have to do with creativity, have to do with managing people. Even if you think about what artificial intelligence what artificial intelligence is changing in the jobs, right, in companies, it's not necessarily that many jobs will go away. Jobs will transform. Right? Jobs will change because tasks that are now very typical of managers will cease to be needed. A typical job of a manager in a company, for example, involves a lot of information filtering and passing reports to the next level. Artificial intelligence takes care of that. That's gone. A lot of the job of a manager today is about project management. It's about deadlines and meetings and making sure that things are done. Artificial intelligence takes care of that planning. What is harder to substitute is creating. What's harder to substitute is communicating with people. The relationships with customers, the relationships with suppliers. Okay? These are the high-level skills that will be hard to substitute, and these are the hard-level skills that you need to get, and these are the hard-level skills that are most typical of an entrepreneurial career. And there is another reason why you should be an entrepreneur today. It's easier than many years ago. Okay? Why is it easier? There's a number of reasons, and I'm not saying it's easy, I'm saying it's easier. There's a number of reasons, but the big one is that the advantage of having size and lots of resources and assets is decreasing. And you look at the top 10 global companies by market value in 2006 and today, you see how it has changed, right? Almost all the companies, I think, except Microsoft, have changed from 2006 to 2021 and also 23, it's very similar, from the top 10. And the biggest change, the underlying change, is that in 2006 and before, 80% of the market value was coming from those companies owning assets. Oil and gas fields, stores, manufacturing plants, hard assets, right, that they have accumulated. Whereas in 2021-23 and forward, 80% of the value comes from intangible assets. That is people, knowledge, data. And you can see it in those companies, right? Those companies gain their advantages by using knowledge and using data and using technology. What does it mean? It means that for an entrepreneur now, there is less of a barrier. I don't need to build a manufacturing network. I don't need to build a supply chain. I don't need to build a distribution network. Okay? I just need talent, data, and the ability to turn that into an idea and into a business. This is one of the main reasons why we are seeing such growth in D2C brands. D2C brands are growing so much because they don't need hard assets to do so. They can compete very hard in their segment with multinational companies like HUL because they don't need to own manufacturing. Someone else does it. They don't need to own R&D labs. Someone else does the product development. They don't need to have distribution because there is Zepto and there is Blinkit ready to take that product to the customer. They don't even need to know how to do e-commerce because there's someone with an e-commerce platform that's going to get it ready for them. They don't need to own pretty much anything, and they are in business as long as they have something to tell the customer and to offer the customer. So these barriers have come down, a lot easier to be an entrepreneur. And making this argument about India, right? The potential for entrepreneurship in India, right? In a world where the value is changing from hard assets to knowledge and people, India is the biggest exporter of human capital in the world. So the entrepreneurs in India have a particular advantage because they have access to that human capital. They have access to that knowledge. It's a great time to be an entrepreneur in the world, but also especially in India. So this is why you need to be an entrepreneur, right? There are more reasons, but we just don't have time. What are some constraints to becoming an entrepreneur? To me, the biggest one And having lived in India, I've had direct experience of this also in my school, talking to Indian students. To me, the biggest one has to do with a certain capability that is critical for an entrepreneur. What do you think these three people have in common? The third one is Thomas Edison, the inventor of the light bulb. Okay? What do these three people have in common? A number of things, but to me one stands out. Failure. They've all failed. And they've all failed pretty badly. Okay? Steve Jobs was kicked out of his company, with the company on the verge of bankruptcy. Elon Musk has failed multiple times with SpaceX, with Tesla, etc. Thomas Edison tried 1,000 times until he got the first light bulb. 1,000 times, 1,000 failures before he got the success. Failure. Failure is synonym with entrepreneurship. Failure counts with entrepreneurship. If some entrepreneur hasn't failed, either they will fail soon or they are not doing entrepreneurship. So I know I'm talking to a room full of high-performing students. Right? Someone was telling me the requirements to get in here, and I'm pretty sure you all are very familiar with success. Right? Success is what you've known the most. And that's a problem. Right? Because you still don't know how you're going to react when you fail, because you will fail. And if you want to be an entrepreneur, and we know that everybody has to, failure and your ability to deal with it has to be there. If you conceive entrepreneurship as, I'm going to give it a shot, and if I fail, then I'm done, that's the end. Or I'm going to try to get into that company, but if I fail, I'm done, entrepreneurship will not happen in India. And there is a little bit of resistance to failure. Right? If when you fail, you first, and then the people around you consider that the end of the world, the end of it, entrepreneurship will not flourish. Entrepreneurship needs to take those risks and use failure as a step to the next thing. Right? The most important thing, right? Ability to learn from the mistake. I encourage you to be an entrepreneur first with your own career. And again, I know who I'm talking to. Right? And I'm very familiar with your career is planned out already, right? Where you're going to be in next year and the next and the next and the next. But I think for the future and for the qualities that companies need for the future, you need to do this thing that entrepreneurs call failing fast. Figure out what you're good at by trying things and learning what doesn't work. And when you fail at something, don't consider it that's the end, I'm not going to do it again. Think about, why did I fail? You start a company, right? Right after college. And it doesn't work out. Doesn't mean that now you are supposed to have another career. It means you are supposed to go back, learn what happened. Maybe you missed a skill. Go back to school, get that skill, and try again. Okay? We need to have this ability to iterate our careers over and over until we hit the thing that is differential. The thing that adds the most value, that is unique, and that people will pay you lots of money for. Right? And the other problem about entrepreneurship, and in particular in India, is reflected in this little segmentation of the consumer market in India. Right? This comes from a venture capitalist, and I like it a lot, because it breaks India into three Indias. Right? There is India 120 million people. That is the consuming class. That is the people who actually spend money and buy products. There are 300 million more, India 2, that are the aspirant class. Their incomes are growing. Little by little, they will be joining India 1. And then there is India 3, 1 billion people, that venture capitalists call the non-monetizable market. Because there's only basic consumption, very, very little spending. Right? What does this have to do with entrepreneurship? the vast majority of startups, the vast majority of funding is for India 1 businesses. All the entrepreneurs are going there because there is money, there is demand, there is willingness to pay, and it's all happening up there in India 1. Okay? And that's a danger, because if entrepreneurs, when you start something, you're only looking at India 1, India's growth will be a K-shaped growth. There will be India 1 and maybe a little bit of India 2 that's going to explode, and India 3 that is going to go the other way, because nobody is investing in their needs. So as a collective effort, right, but also as an opportunity, right, when you're thinking entrepreneurship, if you have the chance, if you have an idea to do something for India 3, their basic needs, which have a lot to do with education, and EdTech now is a super space to be doing entrepreneurship for India 3. If you are in FinTech, because India 3 needs loans, needs insurance, needs other financial services, that's a fantastic space to also be thinking about, because the need is there. And that's the way also to elevate that entire group of people to the rest and have a growth that is consistent across all. This is the example of UPI, right? And it has an added benefit, right? By doing entrepreneurship for India 2 and India 3, entrepreneurs are forced to not think about copying something that was done in the US, copying something that was done in Europe and do it in India. Copying something from outside and do it in India only appeals to the people who can pay for it. It's a very small group of people in India. Doing this entrepreneurship for India 3 forces you to think really solving problems that are Indian and solving them in a different way. And when you do that, like UPI did, when you do that, you come up with a model that is simpler for the consumer and much more cost-effective. And all of a sudden, you have a model that you can export, that you can make it attractive to other countries and to other regions and to other consumers, because it's different, it's simpler, it's cost-effective, it's superior to the ones they have over there. And that's the reason why UPI has had success here, but it's having now success across the world and being adopted, because it's coming from this innovation, looking at the Indian consumer, not looking to copy something else. I think this can unleash a lot, not only of entrepreneurship and innovation in India for the domestic market, but an area of superiority of India abroad. Okay. So the bottom line, as I said, from a strategic point of view, companies are changing. It's inevitable. Okay. And you need to adapt your skills and start working your skills accordingly from now on. Okay. Have more flexible careers, have no fear of failure, and the possibilities in this country will be absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much.